Hello, my name is Anthony Navarro, and I wanted to showcase my ability or mechanic called Temporal Rewind on my tile-based game that I was given. It is because I was so frustrated with chip challenges that I knew for my first mechanic, I had to give me something, or players like me, something where you wouldn't get so frustrated after completing most of the level and then having reset because you pushed a box in a corner. Right. That was one of the worst things and feelings I could experience while playing a game like this. So, this ability allows you to go ahead and rewind any of the interactables, or at least the one interactable for now, through time. As long as you push it, you can go ahead and rewind as many times as you want. But you have limited stamina, so you have to be careful with how many pushes you actually do, or eventually the box is actually stuck there. And I also included this to show how it could be used for puzzle solving. It's a pressure pad and it goes ahead and lowers one pillar, but then as soon as you step off, it raises that pillar back and lowers the other one. So in order to actually solve this, you have to be a little bit clever in shifting these boxes. If you push too many boxes around, however, and don't use the ability, you will not have enough spaces to move. So if you press T, indicated by the green box in the bottom, which will be updated a little bit later to make it look a little bit better, you can now go ahead and push so that box is on the pressure pad and the first pillar is down. Problem is, if you're not being careful, if you just go ahead and push this box out of the way now, you can get here, but guess what? It was the last box you pushed. So you're not going to go ahead and rewind exactly what you needed. I just wanted to show that edge case in this level, I guess. You got to be careful and mindful of what boxes you're pushing and where. You also cannot be standing on the box, right, that you push, because that's not going to work. But you can always later go ahead and push it back. So, to actually solve this, let's see if that one stamina did not deplete my progress, is you gotta push this all the way over here and make sure it's not the last box you are pushing. Push this back down 2 spaces and then you can go ahead and make your way. And all you gotta do now, since that was the last box I pushed, rewind, and you can go ahead and breeze right through. Now to show the code for this, it's actually pretty simple. Most of the basic project already had a lot of the information I needed. I did start with creating a BPI so I could have the things that I needed to interact with each other, like the mostly mostly the edited entity, the interactable box. I made sure it is receiving information. I also had to all these white areas are code I actually added to make this functionality happen. So with the BPI, I just go ahead and put an event in try rewind. And this is basically just to check to see if the box can rewind and has been pushed by the player. Right here, I also set Temporal Rewind back to activate after the box has been pushed. So after, it's basically a reset. So every time you push a box, we reset that over here, right? So once you interact with this box and you deplete the stamina, right, for pushing the box, also plays a nice sound. You now get to reset. It resets to push. It says you can rewind, and it hasn't been rewinded anymore. So after you use this BPI here, you check to see if these are good. Can rewind is good, and has rewind is not good, and the player has pushed the box. You can then check for the previous tile. I just validate here to make sure the box hasn't been destroyed because you will encounter some error code if you go ahead and try to rewind a box that doesn't exist. So this just prevents that from happening. And then you move the box onto its previous tile and play a neat sound effect. Right? This is all it is. It is pretty simple. The project already had the previous tile functionality, so it made it a lot easier. I was gonna go in a roundabout way to make this, honestly, and then I was just really happy when I saw that previous tile already in functionality and moved to tile already in functionality. Once I found that, it was honestly really simple to get it working. I just had to flip the boolean to the correct order and put them and set them in the correct places, and then everything was really straightforward. I also made this pressure plate though, and this was really just to show, honestly, the functionality of Temporal Rewind, how it can be used for puzzles. But you can go ahead and play pillar. This is just really animation loops just to make it look neat because all it does is flip a boolean, honestly, enterable or not enterable. That's really all I'm doing with either of these. This is just a bunch of neat looking things because for some reason I couldn't ever animate things in their actual file itself. So I have a BP tile door, but it doesn't have almost any functionality because anytime I try to actually animate within this blueprint, it just did not work. So I actually had to figure out a roundabout way of making it happen within the pressure plate. I could go ahead and tell it to rewind and it functioned as it was supposed to. And I also have part of the actual temporal rewind. This is really all that happens here. I added this input action into the already provided action map, checked if it's valid, and if and I also store the item that I interact with. I'm pretty sure I added this in item and interacted with. I'm pretty sure I added that somewhere. But once you interact with an item, you go ahead and check if it's still valid and then try to rewind on that item. And that's pretty straightforward. So this will work with basically any interactable once I go ahead and add more interactable items as long as it implements this BPI interface over here. Other than that, there is one last thing to go ahead and show that it's not really that important, I guess, but I just wanted to show it. I just added this to the HUD just to get this to look a lot like the actual project. Not much to do here. It works on a delay. I know these have been a little bit taboo, but it's functional. It also works off the input action, so it's instantaneous. Nothing has to communicate with each other. It's just use the input action. Once that's working, we change the color or the opacity of these items and set them back after a delay. Pretty simple. I do want to add some functionality to that later, but it is functional and I don't have any strange edge cases in my work. And that means you can't rewind multiple boxes. You can't see you can't also do the one thing I really was hoping you could do, and I'd like to show that real quick. But I had to pivot late in the late in the game. Unfortunately, you cannot rewind the box out of the pit. Don't know how to reactivate or respawn another item. And if you were standing here, you also wouldn't be able to go ahead and rewind. Another each edge case, you can just rewind that easily, but if you're standing on it, you cannot rewind, which functionally works, but all the edge cases are worked. The mechanic works as cleanly as I ever needed to. As long as you push the box, you can go ahead and rewind. And that's it for my temporal rewind. I'm hoping to make the rest of these um, sprints dedicated to either other time-based abilities or something that uses this time-based ability to make the project more interesting for puzzle solving specifically. I was going to make this a combat game, but I think this mechanic is going to turn around into something nice. See you around next time, and thank you for watching and spending time with me here. Have a great day.